Okay, so in this video I'm going to be talking about getting a better GPS signal and faster lock on your GPS drones. This is the Foxeer Aura 7. I did a video review on the frame previously, just finished the build, and figured it'd be a good time to talk about this cable that I made here. Well, this is actually one you can buy, but I made one for this model because this one here wasn't long enough. I've talked about this in various other videos in kind of like little segments here and there, but I wanted to combine it into a single video that I could reference because I often get this question a lot. So a lot of bind and fly models come with GPS, like for example this Recon 35 here. You can see GPS here in the back, but a lot of them don't get very good signal lock, or it takes a really long time to get a signal lock. And I'll explain the reason why that is and how you can fix that. I'm not sure why these manufacturers have not addressed this problem yet. Hopefully you guys can reference this video and point it out to them, and they can fix it. It's a very easy fix. It's pretty easy to do, so I'm not sure why they're not doing it. But basically the problem is you plug it in and you're sitting there waiting for a satellite lock, because maybe you want to be able to use GPS rescue and you need at least 6 satellites or 8 satellites, and it's sitting there for a very long time and either does not ever get a lock, or it may take, perhaps as long as 15-20 minutes, and that's a long time, especially if you have like the systems with the Vista just sitting there overheating. This problem seems to be more apparent on ones that have DJI, for the Vista especially, and not as much for the Air unit. That one has better shielding, but this one seems to have a lot of sort of RF noise that is the source of the problem and why you can't get a lock. Now, I have done a previous video where there's, I forget what this is called. Basically, this has a little battery here, and you switch it on. There's a little switch over here somewhere. It'll give power to the GPS, and then you can have that have the GPS get a lock while the rest of your quad is off, and then you can power it on. This sometimes works, sometimes it doesn't work, especially on a noisy Vista where it's basically spewing out a lot of RF noise. So you'll get a lock, when the quad's powered off, but then when you turn the quad on and the Vista's going, all of a sudden you go from 6 satellites to 0 satellites, and it doesn't recover. So this is not a fix-all solution. The reason is you have to actually fix the problem and shield the cable. That is where the signal for all your GPS information is traveling. You got to shield this so that it doesn't get interference from other RF noise sources like the Vista. So Diatone made this little product here, and I'll link it in the video description. I believe it's only available at AliExpress currently. It's like, you get 2 of these, it's like $2. It's like $1 each. And it has a plug here for, I think it'll work mostly with these Eachine GPS units. And those plug in there. And then you solder this to your flight controller, of course. You got your TX and RX and your 5 volts and ground. And this cable is fine for that the GPS module, because it'll plug in. There'll be other ones that'll have a different wire order. So here's a HGLRC M80. This has a different wire order, but you can just solder the correct wires to the correct pads. You don't have to follow the colors. But you can see here, when you peel back this cover, you can see the color of the wires and the order they're in. And this is standard for, I think, these Eachine GPS units. But like the wire order is wrong for these HGLRC M80s. And then on some of these this is an older GPS from HGLRC. This plug doesn't work at all. So you'll have this is not a this cable won't work for everything, so you'll probably have to make your own cable, and I'll explain how to do that in this video. The reason I didn't use this in my Aura 7 is, while this cable is fairly long, it doesn't quite reach all the way. I mean, it almost reached, it was maybe about a centimeter short in terms of wire to reach the flight controller from the back of the GPS. So this will probably work fine for a lot of 5-inch and smaller drones, but like a 7-inch where the flight controller and GPS is kind of further apart, it might just be a little bit too short, which is the case here. And or you are using a GPS that doesn't use this plug and you have to use your own plug, and in which case you have to create a cable for that. So as you can see here, most of the cables don't come with any shielding. And that's what I'm talking about here. So you got to shield these cables here so that it doesn't pick up the RF noise. And almost all these bind and fly models, you can see here, the cable that plugs in here has no shielding. It's bare wire, it's exposed, and that's the source of the problem. So what you got to do, and you can see what you see here on this, is you have this, I'm not sure what kind of metal it is. It's some sort of conductive metal, and they've wrapped it around the actual wire, and then around that conductive metal there's a clear heat shrink that goes around it, and the camera is having a hard time focusing. And that's basically so that this doesn't short on anything in your quad. You need to make sure that whatever you're using for conductivity is being protected, so it's not going to touch anything. Now there's one thing that they didn't do here is they need to have an extra wire that is soldered to this metal shielding that you can solder to a ground on your flight controller, along with the regular ground that goes to your GPS. So you can see this plastic is covering the entire metal. You got to cut some of this away and solder a small wire to that, and then this has to be grounded. So if it's not grounded, it might work, but it probably isn't going to be that effective. This shielding has to be grounded for the actual protecting the cable from being interfered with from outside RF sources. And so if you just use it as is, it's not really going to be that effective. You need to cut away that heat shrink there, solder on a small wire, and then make sure that's soldered to the same ground that the ground for the GPS is soldered to, and then it'll work. So it's pretty easy to make your own cable. So what I did is I took this. I had basically a longer version of this on my Aura 7, and I bought some copper tape, and you can pick this up on Amazon. There's a lot of places you can probably pick this up. It basically has some adhesive on one side, and then this is conductive. If you get if it's non-conductive, it's probably not going to work. So, and you need to make sure that you protect this from the rest of your quad, otherwise it'll short things out because it's going to be shorted to ground. And this basically, you take this copper tape and you just wrap it around the wire. So I just twisted up the wire, then I wrap the copper tape around that to whatever length you want to use. Basically cover the entire length of the wire, basically from the up to the plug all the way to the very end. You obviously have a little bit exposed here where you can solder to your flight controller. You pretty much want to have it all taped up. And then after you put the copper tape, wrap it around the wire, then you want to protect that copper tape. And I use this black cloth tape here, and I wrap that around the copper tape so that it won't short or anything. And of course, I also at the end soldered on a small wire to the copper tape, and then soldered that to ground to make sure that it's grounded. And that is what I have in my Aura 7 here, just a longer cable than you see. It's already been installed. Now it works great. I can before I wasn't getting any satellites at all, zero, indoors, and with the air unit on. But now, even when everything's powered on, with the air unit on, indoors, I'm getting 14 satellites. So, yeah, and the locks right away. It's like within about 30 seconds, I get a lock very, very quickly. So it's definitely doing its job. And I'm not sure why all the GPS drones don't have it set up like this. Almost, actually, pretty much every single one that I've seen is just set up like this Recon 35, where the wire is totally exposed, and that makes no sense to me. So it's pretty easy to do. I think that the drone manufacturers should do this correctly, and you should let them know about this video and tell them to fix their bind and fly drones so that their GPS cables are properly grounded. But you can obviously fix yourself and make your own cable. And so if you have a drone where you want to get more satellites, more than usually about 6 as the maximum, just use this method. It'll work great. And of course, obviously for you guys that are building your own quads, this will work fine as well. Anyway, hopefully this video was helpful. I'll have a link to a tutorial playlist if you want to check out some of the other tutorials. They'll be down in the video description. That's going to do it for this one. I'll talk to you guys in the next one.